All right. Hopefully this will be fun. Dark patterns. Or not. Let's see. Probably would help if I plugged the mouse in. I don't know why they don't work when they're not plugged in. There we go. All right, so I took the feedback from the first biweekly check-in and did some analysis on that, and I'm going to try and address some of the issues that were raised here. There's this interesting propensity for people to focus on the form of the evidence rather than the substance, and it's kind of interesting. Well, I just said that, so. And I'm curious, okay, so the reason that people would want to have a fixed format is because they're trying to automate the grading of the thing that you're submitting. But in this particular case, what I'm interested in is seeing what you're learning. And that's why I'm de-emphasizing the format. So the original goal had been to automate a certain aspect of this. It fell apart. And rather than completely cleanly remove the vestiges of it, we ended up with that stupid JSON file, which I didn't discover until it was too late. So I can't really remove it. Well, I can. That'll just create a different set of confusion. So instead of that confusion, I'll leave that in there. And you're welcome to use it. I gave you the script last week. You're welcome to use that. You're also welcome to use your own free format. In essence, each time you check something in, you are creating a record of what you did. And that gives me something I can go back and I can say, hey, what were they doing? The goal from this point forward, now that I actually have the TAs coordinating, is every week, some portion of you will actually receive feedback from one of the TAs, or from me, about what we see. And that's not graded, it's feedback. It's intended to help you understand where there are places that we see that maybe you could do better, and to congratulate you on places where you do really well, because that's a really good and useful signal for us. It helps us understand what is working and what isn't working. All right, it helps me understand, because I'm the one who's standing up here rambling on. If there's anybody who's stuck, so one of the things that definitely, I definitely got hit by here. Actually, I think I gave feedback to everybody who submitted. Did anybody get feedback on biweekly check-in 1? Right, cool. All right, hopefully that was useful. And I don't want you to feel like I'm not listening to you. I'm listening. I spent a lot of time this weekend doing that, and it's not your issue, but it's mine. I had to use a different process for 416 because 416 is a class of 120. And the last time I looked over the weekend, there are now 47 people in this class, although I think that number might change. I think there might be, they had some sort of registration glitch on Friday, apparently. Because I had people who were like, I had to sign off on to get them re-added to 416 in that case. So I don't know. I'll find out at some point. But if there's only 47 of you, that's great. That means that I have more time to actually do things myself rather than relying on just TAs. I mean, the TAs are great, don't get me wrong, but I try to listen because I want to make the class as good as I can for you. And if I don't know what's working and what's not working, it's hard for me to improve the class. And apparently I'm very scary, and so there's always the anonymous feedback form in case you don't want to say something honestly because you're afraid that I'm going to somehow be able to put you together with the person on Canvas. And I have to admit that I'm really bad at that. I mean, some people have pictures in Canvas, but most people don't. I think I might even have one there. So even if you said the most flaming horrible thing you could, I probably wouldn't know who you were. I'm sorry. That's terrible to say, isn't it? It's terrible and yet true. So sometimes truth is both. So the capstone is a recurring theme here. I don't actually expect very many people have figured out what they want to do for a capstone. What I'm instead doing is expecting you're probably floundering around going, what the fuck am I supposed to do? What is my idea? What is my vision? There are the sample capstones. That's in case your vision's failing you and you just simply want to grab something and say, hey, this is good enough. I can use this to inspire myself. My hope was, in fact, you'd actually say, here's a really cool problem I'd like to solve using cloud technologies, cloud services. If you don't know, I'm here. I'm happy to brainstorm with people. I've got lots of crazy ideas I can give you. I threw out ideas last time I taught this where people were like, that's a terrible idea. So I didn't say they'd be good ideas. I did say crazy. I mean, I used them as examples. There was one that I used. I'm not sure it worked very well, but one that I used was called Study Circle, which was basically where you sit there and you build something that helps people figure out who amongst their group would be good study partners. And based on schedule and whatnot, and then you keep track of where people are and when they're available, and it was a lot of fun. And then you start introducing dark patterns to it, and you realize that something that you think could be really useful could actually be something that's not so useful. Or something that's not so useful to you, but to someone else. I added an evidence, purpose, and structure page to Canvas to try and explain the whole thing around why I'm asking you to put things into GitHub. GitHub becomes this central repository. It keeps track of your history. If you really want, just treat it as a journal. Dear journal, today I managed to get my Hello Cloud program running. Today I watched a video about IAM. What a boring video that was. I had to really drink a lot of coffee to stay awake for 10 minutes. I don't know, does anybody know what IAM is yet? What is IAM?
It's like the permissions and stuff for like an organization on like cloud.
So when you log in, what happens is that it generates a whole bunch of information that it then ships around and allows us to say you are or are not allowed to do certain things. It's in essence security. And let me just say, unless you're into security, security is the thing that you most will loathe in technology because it's the piece that will keep you from getting any useful work done. I had that happen yesterday on my Windows machine where I had to move my WSL virtual hard drive to a different device. And of course, I then tried to start WSL up because I'm trying to do something useful. And what do I get? I get a permission denied error. I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, well, I've got some theory. So I just simply opened up permissions to everything. I literally put everyone on the ACL and said, everyone can do anything they want, and it worked. That's what you do when security breaks and you don't know why it's breaking. But of course, security people won't tell you why it breaks. Why? Because by telling you why something breaks, they're leaking information about why something breaks, and therefore they can't do that because then you might use it to break in. Like, oh my gosh. But security is a necessary evil. That's in a really bad location. Did this move? I feel like it moved. I don't know. I'm going to stand over here so I don't kill myself. Unfortunately, the hospital's not too far away, so if I do kill myself, you can call somebody. They'll come. This is an interesting lab because what we're going to do is we're going to actually start with the dark version. And then we're going to say, what would we do if we didn't want it to be a dark version? So this is, what happens when we start with somebody's paying you really well. Hey, I'm going to give you $25,000 to build this really cool set of terms and conditions, and you have to build all of this stuff to get people to agree to stuff that they didn't really understand or read. How many of you have a smartphone? How many of you agreed to the terms and conditions of your smartphone the first time you booted it up? How many of you read them? You know what's really fun is when you actually take those terms and conditions and you feed them through something like Claude, and you get a summary, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I agreed to that. I keep wanting to build a web browser that puts a terms and conditions link in like an X header that says X header terms and conditions, you agree, by processing this web page, you agree to these terms and conditions, and then using that and seeing what happens when you start suing people for violating the terms and conditions to which they agree. Well, we agreed to that. We didn't agree to that. I said, I'm sorry, but it's in the X header. Of course you agreed to it. It said, if you don't agree to these things, don't process this web page. Oh, well, that's all automated. Well, there you go. Same thing on my phone. I haven't done that yet. I have dreams like that. I told you, crazy ideas. So what the real goal here is to see what the difference or distinction is here. And these kinds of dark patterns recur over and over again. And you will be building them into cloud applications because that's the norm of what's expected. So why are we doing this? And why am I annoyed by the fact that that mouse pointer is sitting in the middle of the page? Oh, we forgot to lock the door. Hey, no worries. I'm getting people to laugh a little bit today, which is very promising. It is really hard. You know, I've taught classes internationally before, and I always counted it as a success when I could get a non-native English language crowd to laugh at jokes. Because that's actually really hard. Let's see, I've had a bunch of classes on AMD 64 architecture in Taiwan, for instance. And I think one of the hardest classes I ever taught was a 5-day lecture, a 5-day class in Japan in the late 90s in translation. I had 3 or 4 simultaneous translators. They switch every 15 minutes. And that was hard. I got food poisoning on day 4. And of course, I was the only person there to teach, so I taught with food poisoning. I sat down a lot that day. I'm pretty sure it came from the salad. So everybody's always like, oh, did you eat did you eat sushi? And I'm like, not that day. I had salad and pasta. And I don't think it came from the pasta. There you go. So you make promises to users. I mean, you build an app. People don't take your app because they think you're a good person, because you're not. Or maybe you are. They don't really know. What they want is they want something that it does. It offers them some service or some ability. Why did you agree to the terms and terms and conditions of the service agreement for your phone? Because you want to use the phone. I mean, frankly, there's no real bargain there. They basically have all the power. You just simply accept it, and you just say, I will just have to live with it. So you'll build systems. You'll say, we respect your privacy, because, of course, everyone values their privacy. How many of you actually believe when they say, we won't use your data, that they won't use your data? See, I asked that question in a way that I knew nobody was going to answer yes, and therefore I can actually say, see, we're all in a complete agreement on this point, because they will. There's just this natural inclination to use your data because it provides them with an opportunity to make more money. You can delete your data anytime. How many of you have ever tried to get your data deleted? Yeah, a couple hands. There you go. How successful were you?
Yes.
Yes? Wow. What did you do?
It was an email service called Apollo, and they just had like regular account information.
And you got rid of it?
But I used like an external service to like.
You paid somebody to get rid of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great business, isn't it? Hey, we're going to go around to all the data brokers, and for X number of dollars, we will get the data brokers to get rid of your data. And since this is a persistent problem, it's perfect. Why? Because you buy a membership to get rid of this data that you didn't want to give them in the first place. Do you have a membership? Yeah, there you go. I mean, I wish I could say that these dark pattern things don't actually happen. They really do. That's why I'm going to talk about them, because I want you to see the reverse side, which is you don't have to do this. But adding these dark patterns happens because it's an effective way of monetizing anything that touches the cloud. And it doesn't even have to be something you're directly doing. It can be indirectly, the way that you're doing it. We won't share your information. Nobody believes that. How do you know if these promises are real? Every web page I go to, every web page, every single one says, fill out the, give us your cookie preferences. Every single, my freaking blog website does that now because somebody convinced me to put something in there. And I'm like, I don't want anybody's data. I literally don't want your data. And it's nice because, in fact, the checkboxes are something like, necessary cookies for accessing the site. That's it. It's like grid because I don't want anything more than that because I don't want people's data. I don't want that responsibility. So the original term comes from a term. The original term was coined in 2010. There we go. Speak. It is designed, and so this was a UI designer. He literally said, what's the dark side of this? How do we do this on the other side? And the goal was to take UI principles and build things that benefit the system at the expense of the user. That's completely flipping HCI on its head. It's like we're going to actually try to make sure we get more information to those poor rich people so they can actually get richer and we can get poorer. So why did you get rid of the data? Were you concerned about it?
Well, they, I'm pretty sure illegally posted, my stuff on their, SEO blogs and whatnot.
There you go.
Yeah.
They would never do that. I got a story about that one. SEO. And now we've got AI-driven SEO. And we got chat. Did anybody see that ChatGPT is now going to come with advertising? We're safe in Canada. They're only testing it in the US so far, but it's coming. And that will apply to the free account and the $8 per month account. These aren't bugs. They're not accidents. These are deliberate design decisions that someone made. Did anybody check out the Hall of Shame? What'd you think?
There's a lot.
Yeah, you're like, whoa. This is crazy. And we see it all of the time. It's a repeating pattern. I talked about the YouTube example. How many of you know about Spotify? How many of you know about OnlyFans? That's one of my favorites. When I get somebody who's pitching their OnlyFans account, I have a picture that I just send them back that says, it's literally this piece of information that says the average OnlyFans content provider makes, I don't know, it's like $35 a month. It's some incredibly small number, and you're like going, why would you do that for $35 a month? There's a movie that this always reminds me of called Hunger Games. I don't know if anybody here has seen it. I think it might have happened within your lifetime at least, which helps. I mean, I can't mention The Princess Bride. You'd all be like, who? What? Perfectly reasonable. The Hunger Games is in fact exactly what we've built here, right? Is where the content providers all want you to think you're going to make it rich. What do they get out of it?
I guess number one thing is it drives engagement, and then that allowed them to put ads on their site and stuff, and they'll get paid off the ads.
So what is it they're looking for? They're looking for content. If you go to YouTube, YouTube wants everybody to contribute content because they want content, because that's how you get engagement. Because if I have something that you're interested in, even if it's as esoteric as nutrisophic logic, I did a video search for that over the weekend. I actually found a really nice video doing an introduction to nutrisophic logic. And you're like going, what is nutrisophic logic? Exactly. I think that video had like 42 views, and it was 10 years old or something. That's not the content that YouTube is looking for. until the day that Nutrisophic logic suddenly, becomes a trending phrase, and people are going, oh, what is this? And then suddenly they're all looking at it. The people who actually make content for YouTube almost never make any money from it, except for a very few. That's the Hunger Games side of it. A very few make a lot of money. Spotify is at least as bad. I remember seeing this video of the president of Spotify basically talking about all these wonderful principles of helping artists share their music with the world, and how they were trying to do this so at least 100,000 artists could make a living doing this. And I mean, this was like a U.S. congressional panel, and the woman asking the questions was really good. She says, how much does the average Spotify artist make per month? He said, oh, I'm not sure. She says, according to your own data, $12. And she said, given the current rate that you're doing, and the number of people you have who you're supporting with their actual contributions to Spotify, how long do you estimate that it's going to take before you have 100,000 people? And he says, well, I'm not sure. And she says, according to your data, 75 years. And suddenly you look at that and you go, it's just one more dark pattern. And so that's why when you go and you look at that, you're seeing specific examples of this, but they're all over the place, everywhere you look. And the hardest part for me is that once I've seen them, I start looking for them. It's like I've done security work before, and every time I go through airports, I think of how someone who is actually dedicated on breaking through the airport security would do it. And it's like, it's a bad habit. I can't even stop doing it. I think the best way to do it is you actually have a medical emergency inside. You have one of the medical providers smuggle something in. How's that for, like, dark thoughts? All right, so let's identify some techniques we're going to use here. Trick consent. We have pre-checked boxes, confusing language. Those are one of my favorites. I do agree, I do agree, I don't agree, I do agree, I don't agree. And it's like you have to actually sit there and manually parse every single one of them, or otherwise you're just sitting there clicking, yeah, da, 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 da. And this is a pattern that I've seen even on things where, it's like a medical intake form. And they're asking all these questions, and then suddenly they switch the order, or, licensing, online licensing form. Hidden costs, fees that are only revealed at checkout. Hey, Airbnb is really big on this right now. We show you the actual price. Yeah, that's because you got beat down by this. Because a number of jurisdictions started requiring that you show the actual price of something, not the pre-discount, pre-feed price. My favorite was when you went and looked for airline flights, where, look, for $1, Flair will fly you to Mexico City. And then you go and you look, and there's like, wait a minute, there's a fuel surcharge, and there's a passenger processing fee, and then there's a musical conveyance fee, and then there's a charge for a personal item that you bring on the plane, and I'm making some of that up, but that's basically the whole thing, is that you can list it for $1, which you're going to go, wow, that's really cheap, isn't it? And then you find out it's actually $1,200. You're like, well, I might as well have flown in Air Mexico, and they wouldn't have done this to me, and I'd have only paid $900. Ever had this happen? Ever used Uber Eats? I mean, I feel like that's all fees and charges and surcharges, and you're like, by the time you go, well, gee, that $14 sandwich, which wasn't very good to begin with, cost you $30. And they want a tip. That is really a good example of a dark pattern. How many of you pay that?
This is like about something you mentioned a bit before. What is the issue with ChatGPT having ads on there?
Do you think it's going to stop there? Well, so right now what they're saying is the ads are going to appear clearly and separated from the actual content. You guys aren't old enough to remember Google before it became an advertising farm. See, when you first went to the Google web page, you can still find it on the Wayback Machine. It's google.stanford.edu. That's the way back. It just gave you a web search. And then they started adding ads, and the ads were clearly separated out. And then the ads became, so I think they started on the side first, and then they put them on the top and the side, and they put them on the bottom, and now it's writing inline. And so as I listen to OpenAI basically say, those ads will be separated, I'm thinking in the back of my head, for now. This is a company that's not making money. Do any of you believe, how many of you would be surprised the day that ChatGPT starts changing what it answers you based upon what the advertisers are paying it to answer? See, again, I asked a question where I knew that nobody was going to raise their hand, so therefore I've got the confirmation. Oh, he's going to raise his hand. He's going to be surprised.
Well, I feel like, I don't know if I'm surprised, but I also think that if they get, like, exposed for doing that, like, no one will do it.
I don't think so.
It's free.
But his other competitors are, like, already better than this, so why don't you use ChatGPT if you're, like, rating that?
Well, that's a separate question. But my point was that when I look at the ChatGPT promise they're not going to do that, I don't believe it. And maybe it's just me being cynical, but I'm hoping that I can spread that as a disease. You can become cynical as well. Yeah.
My thing is, do you think that majority of the population would even care if that was the case? Like,
No, I don't.
I asked, like,
I actually don't. I think the reason that advertising has become so predominant is that people actually don't care because they'd rather just simply watch the ads and get the content for free. Right. And what you're doing then is you're becoming the product. I mean, I think YouTube is really the absolute best example of this, but I would argue that Amazon Prime did the same thing with Amazon Prime Video, which was Amazon Prime Video used to have no ads. Rather than raise the price of Prime, what they did was they said, we're going to add ads, but you can buy ad-free Amazon Prime Video by paying us another, I don't know, whatever it is, $4 a month. So what they did was they raised the price, right? The term that I have read in the media, popular media, is called enshittification. And I feel that is the ultimate in dark patterns, which is we make the product worse to get people to buy upgrades. This is very useful to think about as you start to plan your startup company. You think, I'm going to build the world's best product, and over time, I am going to turn this into something where I won't want to be associated with it because it's so exploitive. And by that time, I will have sold the company to someone, and I can retire and live in wherever you want to live. I don't know. If you had a choice of living anywhere in the world, where would you live?
here.
Here. There you go. Well, you can actually afford to do that if you sell the company for enough money. Roach Motel. Easy to get in, hard to get out. I see this pattern all the time. Where it takes months and months and months to cancel a membership or a subscription. Forced continuity. So you get a free trial, you gave them a credit card, so you've authorized them to auto-charge you. I have somebody recently who decided that they were going to, the credit card wouldn't go through, which was fine. I was moving the service anyway. And they then sent me an email that said, we're deleting all of your data. And I was like, that's great, go for it. And then a month later, they charged my credit card. Say what? It was only $600, right? Only.
Well, that is obviously a pretty bad example. Well, it's like a bad case, not a bad example. But what is wrong with a free trial going to auto charge if it is in the terms communicated to you that you can use it for free if you want, cancel at any time, and then it converts?
I have a really good counterexample to that. Anybody ever heard Disney Plus? So when you sign up for a free trial of Disney Plus, you actually agree to terms and conditions. And I'm not making this up, you can go look it up. But in fact, a guy did this. And 10 years later, while he was at Disney World, he died of anaphylaxis because they served him something he was allergic to after he had told them he was allergic to it. And the lawyers literally went into court and said because he signed up, he never actually continued. He canceled it in the free period. Because he signed up for a free Disney Plus account, he was prohibited, his estate was prohibited from suing Disney because he had disclaimed all damages to Disney. How's that for dark? Do you think that if you signed up for a free trial that you should give up your rights in perpetuity to sue the party that gave you the free trial?
Isn't that necessarily different from the charge itself, but the right to sue over something like that? But the concept of free trial and auto charge, I think, is still different.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, right? As long as you made it easy to cancel. I mean, I know that one of the things that happened in the US is they had actually started passing a rule that was going to require that it be as no more difficult to cancel as it was to sign up. And then they had a change of governments, and the new government immediately quashed that.
Yeah, I'm asking because I'm not too sure about this, but like when companies put like stuff like that in the terms and conditions that you cannot sue Disney or whatever if you sign up for this, like is there not an authority that they have to like answer to when they put that? Like, is there some sort of rules and regulations for what you can actually put in your terms and conditions, or like I'm just asking because I'm curious.
No, actually, in general, they're not. So here's the interesting thing. You can put anything you want in your terms and conditions. If someone disagrees with them, that will become an issue in any controversy between you. So the case that I cited, I was very careful about the way I worded this. Disney did actually present this as a defense against the lawsuit, but in fact, ultimately withdrew it because they took so much negative public press. Now, press because of it. I don't know that there was a legal decision in that particular case. But what will happen then is that the lawyers on the other side for the estate would logically argue that there's no connection between those two, that he did not receive any benefit that would have allowed him to give this right up in perpetuity. And then you make public policy arguments and whatnot. But guess what that requires? Guess what any kind of legal action requires? How many of you have parents that are lawyers? I shouldn't ask these personal questions. Sorry, I know that's kind of a horrible, despicable kind of thing to be. I mean, I know a lot of lawyers, and I can tell you, having been engaged in enough litigation as an expert, I've litigated myself a couple of times, but mostly I work as an expert. The one thing you have to have in order to litigate any of this stuff are deep pockets. Because it all gets expensive after a while, like after the first 30 minutes, which are free. I literally sat in outside of a courtroom one time and just sat around and counted up the number of people that were involved in that particular lawsuit. Now, this was corporate litigation. It was old patent litigation. And this was 20 years ago, and there were at least $100,000 worth of lawyers sitting in one room. So $100,000 a day. Misdirection. Visual hierarchies that guide you to the wrong choice. It's like transparent windows and kind of things. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Confirm shaming? That one's interesting. No thanks, I don't want to save money. Okay, so you have to be a psychologist practically to be able to work in tech, at least in this space. Okay, so what did you find? You said you found a lot. Did you find anything that stood out in the Hall of Shame?
I have to take a look again.
That's okay. I mean, obviously they had some impact on you. Did anybody else look at the Hall of Shame? Anybody find something they were just like, wow, whoa? How many other people looked at the Hall of Shame? Did you just look at it and go, it was pretty boring?
I mean, it was something which, I mean, for some points that already I know.
Okay.
Something which was quite different was calling the customer service to cancel the subscription. So that was kind of.
And then you're trying to call X to cancel your subscription, and we know that X doesn't actually have anybody on the phone. Yeah.
I don't remember which company it was, but clicking the X would actually make you sign up for the platform as opposed to closing the modal.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Wow. So that was your implicit signature to sign up. That's cool. All right, cool. So why would you build one yourself? And the real reason to do this is because I want you to understand that dark doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just simply means that it's not, I don't know, it's maybe a little shady or underhanded. I mean, dark would be shady, right? And the real goal, the learning objective here, is to help you understand why these work so that you can recognize them. And then if you want to implement them in your software, you'll know how to do it. And if you don't want to implement them in your software, you'll know how to not do it, how to not fall into that trap. Part of the trap here is somebody just asks you to do something and you don't really understand why they're doing it. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. It's like he said, you know, some of these things he's already seen before, but then the phone call to cancel was actually pretty good. So you can't defend against things that you don't understand. That's kind of the interesting side of security as well, where if you want to keep people from breaking into your system, you have to learn how people break into systems. So the lab is pretty simple today. It's just design some terms of service. Now, in fact, I don't expect that you're going to actually come out with a terms of service screen here. The goal is to get started on this. So just, you know, team up and sit down and say, what techniques do we want to use for our terms of service? You know, what is our approach here? Maybe this is the right way to frame it. Right, so the suggestion is we're going to change the terms of service that say we're going to allow data sharing. Previously it said we're not going to allow data sharing. We're going to allow data sharing. How do you hide that? But how many times a day, a week, a month, do you actually go to something you've been using all along and it says we've updated our terms of service? Happens occasionally. How many of you believe that the updated terms of service are in your favor? See, I asked that question knowing that no one was going to raise their hand anyway, so therefore I've now confirmed that no one's going to be surprised when the terms of service are less favorable. So the first version, we'll just spend like 15 minutes doing this. So your goal is to maximize the accept click. So just think about what would you do across these things. You saw the dark videos. You might want to pair up with somebody who actually watched the dark patterns stuff. You saw those. You read about the techniques. Pick a couple and say, this is what I'd use and this is why I'd use them. And how would you use them? Like I said, I don't expect you're going to have anything like working here. I'm mostly looking just for some basic concepts. What did you find, or what are you arguing is the most persuasive or the most valuable? So we got 15 minutes to do this. And I will start the timer now. This does make the videos pretty boring to watch. So, you know, yeah, just group up and do whatever.
Should we do this in just like plain text, or should we try and like actually design something?
If you want to design something, go for it. Knock yourself out. If you're really good, maybe you're one of these people who like thinks in wireframes. I'm not one of those people. Then go for it. Otherwise, if you want, I've got a whiteboard marker there. You're welcome to use the one whiteboard marker that's probably dead on the whiteboard over there.
Okay.
You want to put money on the fact that whiteboard marker is not alive?
I'm assuming it's also not alive.
One of my goals in life has always been to find whiteboard markers that don't work and throw them away. Because I have learned that whiteboard markers never self-heal. Once they stop working, they stop working. Oh, you're good at this then. Yeah, look at that. Gee, I'm so surprised. Yeah.
Is there a specific or just going off of that, like somewhere on Canvas are we supposed to download for this lab?
Yeah, I didn't. You just stopped the slides.
And are we submitting this on GitHub? Like, you don't want to put in
You can if you want. I mean, again, the goal there is to put what you're learning, so that because if you put what you did in there, and I look at that, God damn.
like where in the Git would we put this, like in which?
Oh, I don't know. Put it under evidence, logs.
I created like an evidence doc that I
Yeah.
I can just put it like number 2 and then.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Perfect. I mean, don't get hung up on the structure, because I'm smart enough that I can actually take your Git history and figure out where you put things.
For every single course, it's always exactly do this and put it here.
That's what I find interesting. Yeah, this is really interesting because I'm like, and so the reason they structure that is because it makes it easier to do automated assessment. But I don't want to do automated assessment because if I give you if I give you a rubric, you're going to optimize to the rubric.
And that's where, like, when I see that, and then I'm thinking about it, like, that's what I'm trying to do, figure out exactly what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
You want us to not do this.
And what I want is I want to actually like read this thing and say, I see what you actually learned. And it's hard. It is really hard to design for that. Seriously. I still haven't started my timer. I better start it before I forget. What? No.
Are we assuming users already inside agree to the previous terms? They are just trying to have new features.
That's perfectly reasonable, yes. Right, so this is an update to your existing terms. Yeah, and it's an update. So, right. Last time I did this, I made people read through terms and conditions and just like pick one clause that they thought was, they were just like, if I'd actually ever read this, I would never have agreed to this. It was for most people in that class. I mean, that was part of a very dark dark sequence in the class because I was talking about, have you ever seen free VPN services advertised? Do you know how free VPN services make money? No, it's even worse than that. No, you know what they actually make their money on? That you're agreeing to be a proxy server. And so what they do is they use you as a residential proxy service. And there are nasty things that can happen that way because they don't actually have any content controls at all.
So you can just have anything like routed through your computer, download to it?
The worst part is that it may not ever actually be on your computer. It may just simply flow through your computer. But how about this? Let's just say that it might actually involve an early morning wake-up call from law enforcement saying that you've been doing something you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
That's why it's very dark. I kind of upset some people last term, so I'm being a little more careful about it. I just walked out of an hour-and-a-half long meeting about this.
How did you upset some people? Like,
What is the most objectionable thing you could imagine coming across that?
Child exploitation.
There you go. There you go. And the problem with that stuff is if they seize your device, they're going to see all your pictures. Anything you've ever taken since you had that phone. That's the issue. Not that anyone would ever take those kinds of pictures. But that's an unexpected harm, right? You don't expect somebody's going to go through your personal photo. Well, maybe you do assume that now. If you go to the US, of course you're assuming they're going to look through it. And some of that might actually fall into the legal classification, even if it's just you. So I'm not giving that lecture until I talk. There's a sexual violence group here on campus that actually deals with these things, and I need to talk to them and find out what to provide. Yeah. I want to come see yours. Oh yeah, absolutely. This is going to be fun. Do you have a wireframe already up or something? Oh, even better. Wow.
Have like this page expires in around 5 minutes, and then all of the bad clauses are hidden via like this white text over here. If you click no thanks, it'll warn you, and the button will move around until.
And you did that in under 10 minutes. Which AI did you use?
4.5 Opus. Claude.
Oh, okay. You Opus. Yeah, Claude's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's really. And so you do you use Claude Code on the web?
I use like just like Windsurf. It's like.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I know it's really easy to do that kind of graphical stuff. I mean, most of
It's good for UI, like really good.
I mean, it's just like, that is great. That is so cool. I love that one. If you could, I want you to like screenshot or something that, put that in your Git repo, because I'm going to steal that one. That is awesome. Under 10 minutes to be able to demonstrate that. That is cool. All right, so somebody actually blew me away just by simply building this thing under, in like 10 minutes using AI. See how easy it is? Is that scary or what? And Claude knew those patterns.
Yeah. So funny.
So that means it was trained on them. See, this is the interesting thing about training, is that when they dump all the information in there, the good, the bad, it's all there. Everything is there. You can have a conversation with these things, and they know something about all of this stuff. They just don't. It's like, imagine you were walking around with the encyclopedia in your head. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to turn to the right page at the right time, but when somebody asks you the right question, you're like, ah, I know about that. I studied that when I was just a little learning large language model. I mean, it takes like weeks or months to train these things, right? How many of you have done any machine learning? Ah, you guys know all about this stuff, right? Didn't they teach you how to train LLMs?
Like, yeah, I learned by myself, like the transformer architecture, like how you, it's just basically just trained on like predicting the next word, and then it just keeps doing that again and again with all these tokens in its context window, and then it makes sense of things. But like, it just depends on the data that you have.
You know what's really cool? It turns out you can actually figure out when they're fabricating based upon the information, the structural information around when they're generating the response. I was running experiments on that last night and this morning. Because I'm interested in looking at how do you figure out when AI isn't being honest. There's a lot of people who know, if you've ever worked with these things, that they're not very honest. So how do you know when they're not being honest? And more importantly, what can you do with that? It probably didn't teach you very much about reinforcement learning with human feedback.
Like,
That's fine-tuning.
I'm looking into that a little bit myself right now, but yeah.
That's dark stuff. That is not good. The biggest thing I don't like about it is the way that most of it is actually collected is by using people in gig workers in low-wage economies is the way I usually describe that, who are literally paid pennies to rate up, down. If you use Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok, you will sometimes get A/B testing. And when you answer, they take that data and they use it for training future models. I have this really cool example of that where both of the answers that Grok suggested are wrong. And I was like, great, that's what I want to do. I want to put data in there that will always perpetually include this wrongness in it. I'm boring him.
Oh.
Not enough sleep, right?
No,
That's okay. I know that feeling.
I asked ChatGPT and it said, I can't do this, this is bad. Then I had to ask it to say, oh, it's for the class.
And then it said, okay,
Yeah, pretty much it is that.
not a problem. Yeah, I know. I found some of that too. You start playing with, so I use, when I'm really playing with things, I'll use a local model. And that way I get to control the system prompt. And so, it's like, you get a different response when you say you're a truth speaker versus when you say you're a court jester. I mean, your court jester, it'll make anything up. It's like, hey, no problems. I can say anything I want. You tell it that it's a truth speaker, and it'll actually like be truthful. You're like, wow, this is sort of weird. But most of the time, you don't get to control the system prompt. Okay. Let's see here. I think that Claude generator one definitely takes the cake so far. So how many of you actually, well, it sounds like you actually did some things with AI. So possible prompts you might use here. Hide or obscure the important items. You did that one, right? You had the white text on a white background. This is like an SEO trick, isn't it? Or people are doing this in resumes and CVs and cover letters now, apparently, because, of course, they know that AI is going to read the cover letter or the CV. This is sort of like the opposite of the redaction trick, where people will take a, they'll like use Acrobat, they don't know what they're doing, they'll put a black bar over something and think it's redacted, but it's not flattened, so therefore the actual text is underneath it. There was some Epstein file stuff in the US that ended up doing that. Apparently that was because the original court document was redacted incorrectly and nobody ever fixed it. So this is kind of the opposite. I liked that. That was actually a really cool trick. And I'll give you credit for it, even though I think it was Claude that did it. You must have prompted Claude and asked it for some of these good things. Good. All right, so create urgency. Urgency is a big one, right? So I actually did the whole graduation thing last November. I'm still getting ads for photos that they took. And they originally said, oh, those photos are only going to be available until the 8th of January. Why? Because they're gone. Once that date passes, they're gone. And I'm like going, it doesn't cost you anything to store them. You're going to keep them, and you're going to keep periodically dinging me to say, are you sure? Are you really sure? Because all you have to do is sell it once. And you pay for hundreds of people, if not thousands, because storage is cheap. So that lose access is important. Use social pressure and exploit color, size, position, all of those things. Did anybody come up with any of those things? I mean, it was on the next slide, so yeah.
So it had like a progress bar at the top, which will like kind of like when you play a game, you want to like progress, right? So if you get a progress bar.
Oh, I see. So you make them feel like they're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting. Human psychology becomes a big part of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so who wants to share their dark design? I mean, you don't have to. That's fine. We can go on. Yeah.
I said creating multiple different modals and then having some very standard things on the first modal and then having things you don't want them to read on the subsequent ones. So they click accept, they just think they're kind of sifting through them. But they might just read the first one and not the third, fourth, fifth.
So you put the impactful ones further down on the list because you're expecting them to lose attention. See, it's just like training Transformers, seriously. The farther away it is, right? So it's the fatigue aspect. You keep presenting it so much information that people become fatigued. Nobody's going to read those terms and conditions because it's like you said, who reads them? And what are you going to do? But you don't really know what you've agreed to. And then when they claim that you did agree to them, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck, aren't I? I guess I did. Is anybody uncomfortable with these things? Or do you think this is just cool? Or maybe both? Was anyone uncomfortable with any of the techniques we were talking about? I see a couple of hands go up. All right, so you've actually talked before, but yeah. You think I wasn't looking?
No, I just think it's not fair, I guess, just to hide all this kind of stuff.
It's not fair to hide all of this kind of stuff. It feels devious, doesn't it? Like underhanded. Not like legally wrong, but sort of ethically wrong.
Yeah.
Now, ethics is something that everyone has, but that doesn't mean everyone has the same ethical standards. We don't talk a lot about ethics in computer science, but what we build, and the reason I think it's important to at least talk about this, what we build definitely involves building technologies that are used to manipulate people. I don't care what your ethics are. I just want to make sure that you are making a conscious decision rather than viewing everything through the lens of this is just a technology project. You want to build something that exploits people, go for it. Everybody's got to make a living somehow. But do it knowingly, don't do it unknowingly. So now let's step back and say, what would you change in your dark pattern design? And what would you do differently to make it? I mean, we got 3 people who basically said they had some ethical concerns. So maybe they're the only people who need to do this. The rest of you are like, yeah, I don't care. Money's money. What would you do differently? How would you change it? And when you're thinking about that, what are you giving up? Is there anything that's more difficult about that version? Now he's going to be back over asking Claude to build him one that's like actually clearly spelling these things out. Like, they don't give you diffs of these, do they? How many times do the terms and conditions do they actually give you a diff of the T's and C's? Here's the red line version, so you can see exactly what changed. Not often. I actually decided I would try Claude to see what it did, and this is what it created for me. Probably not as good as yours will be. I love things like this. Read the complete updated terms, 2,400 words. I'm like, wow. Oh, the page is too long, that's why. It's not really any different. And I think the interesting point, at least for me, was that it took him under 10 minutes to build the dark pattern version of it. It didn't take me very long to build the not so dark pattern version of it. There's really not a lot of difference in the amount of effort that's required to build these two things. The only question to ask yourself is, which one do you want to be building? And if this is your product and your primary goal is to make as much money as possible, by all means, make sure that you basically use these techniques, use these patterns. How many of you are now motivated to use these patterns to increase your personal income? A few people are honest. The rest of them are like going, well, I can't be quite this blatant. You will get that point. That is always the interesting thing that happens in cloud, is that everybody starts out with these really novel ideas, these really fun ideas, and then they end up doing things that they're like, wow, why did I have to do that? Got to pay those cloud bills. It's just like any addictive substance, right? You know, here, the first one's free, but after that you got to pay. Ew.
Do you have an example of a company which you think is like ethical, I guess? Maybe in the sense that they don't use these dark patterns.
I would say that the reality is that the world is much more nuanced than this. The example that he had where the button was moving around when you tried to click on it, that's the extreme example. I don't see that one very often, but I have seen it. I can't say I've never seen it. I don't see that very often, but I also don't see a lot of this. I have seen some that are closer to this than others. Most of them are somewhere in between. The reason, of course, to make it somewhere in between is that you don't really want people to say no, but you don't want people to think that you're an ethical scumbag either. So the important thing in this business is to appear as sincere as possible. And once you can fake that sincerity, you got it made.
So I actually do have an example for that, and I was going to ask you if you think government apps, like, for example, there was a COVID-19 app, but there have been other ones or services. Do you think, because they don't have a profit motive, right, they're trying to provide a service as good as they can, but although that may not exactly happen.
How about
Do you
this?
think they have dark patterns?
Here at UBC, during the pandemic, one of the things they required was that they were expecting everyone, nobody was here then, right, of course, everyone was responsible for uploading their vaccination records to a third-party service. I refused. I actually refused. I went and looked at that third-party service, and do you know how many data security experts they had as part of that company? Take a guess.
0.
Bing! You win! Everybody in that corporate management was a doctor. They were all from the medical fields. And I looked at it and I said, I'm not going to give you guys this data. I was part of a class action lawsuit, must be 7 or 8 years ago, in which some information was shared with researchers at UBC and it was leaked. And the actual class action lawsuit, class action lawsuits, most of the time you get $7. oh, sorry, we shared your personal information with the whole world. Here's your $7 for the damage that it caused you. I got $4,000 for that particular legal settlement, and that's probably a record for me. So I had a very concrete reason for objecting to it. And in the end, what I said was, I gave it to them on paper, and I said, you can upload this yourself if you want, but know that it's not with my explicit consent. I don't know what they ever did. I mean, did it make any difference? Probably not, but probably all that data got leaked because, you know, once COVID was over, the doctors have all this really cool health data. Why don't they just simply, like, you know, make some money from it? That's not outlandish, is it? There's this company called 23andMe. Maybe you've never heard of them. They do DNA analysis from saliva, and they went bankrupt. And part of the concerns during their bankruptcy was that they were going to sell all this data. Well, 23andMe actually changed their terms and conditions. I'm on power. What do you mean? Did I forget to plug it in? I never plugged it in. Computers. Why do they need power? It's always something I forget. So they changed their terms and conditions, and they said, well, actually, we can now use this. There we go. It's fixed. We can now actually use this. I never logged into their website ever after they changed their terms and conditions. I never agreed to them. So I'm in this ambiguous position where if they actually used it, I probably would have a cause of action because I never agreed to allow them to do that. But again, do I want to go spend, I don't know, $2 or $3 million litigating something? Probably not. It's probably not worth that. All right. So what did you come up with? This is the prompt one. I'm seeing one slide behind. Right, okay. What did you come up with? What did you find from the exercise? Anything? I mean, I thought that was really cool that you were able to, like, build a wireframe. Like, indeed, I got Claude to build that wireframe for me almost immediately. I was like, wow, that is really, really fun. I don't do a lot of graphical stuff, but I do know that I can ask Claude to build me a TLA plus specification for an impossibility proof, and it can do that. Kind of scary. I don't know if you've ever written any TLA plus, but that's what the 416 people will end up using in order to prove their that their protocols actually work. Because it turns out that people really do want their distributed databases, which we are using here. We are the consumers for the product that 416 offers. People like us who want our databases to just work right, we don't have to worry about the fact that all that nonsense goes into the covers. We don't need to know TLA+, fortunately. But maybe you want to use it in some other language. I mean, what languages do people not know in here? I love that question. Anybody ever written any code in Prolog? Fourth? Probably not even in Pascal, right? You want to bet if I ask Claude, it'll be able to write in all three of those languages? There's a programming language called Brainfuck, which is, in essence, a language that implements a Turing machine. It's literally got a little alphabet, and it, you make the tape go forward, one move, backwards, one move, and it's kind of cool. It's like, wow, somebody implemented a Turing machine language. And the fact that you can actually build a hello world in it is really interesting. Probably more work than it was to build it in when we did the hello cloud. But of course, that particular example, I actually bet I could get Claude to write it. All right, so it's not any harder to build these things. to be ethical or non-ethical. The primary driver has nothing to do with ethics, and it has everything to do with the business needs of the company you're working for, the client you're working with. So that's why we see these patterns occur, because they align with business interests. Designing ethically means you have to actually be committed to it, and that's a conscious decision. It should be a conscious decision regardless of which way you go. So you don't have to do this. I encourage you to capture at least some of what you did today and put it in the repo. It doesn't have to be in the structure. The structure is suggested, not required. Just put something there. And then that way when I go looking for it in the, next week or the week after, or one of the TAs does, I have TAs this time. It's awesome. Last time the 2 TAs they gave me, one of them disappeared midterm and the other one started using ChatGPT and pasting the responses, and I was like, that doesn't work. I mean, I'm not against the use of AI, but I try to be transparent about it. And the slides, I actually do write the slides and I go through them, but I have Claude actually. It was a combination of Codex, so ChatGPT, and Claude generating them to build the pipeline that I have now. So. Oh, that's the problem. I look at my screen, I see the slide following. That is confusing. Okay, and on Thursday we are actually going to move into our discussion about CCT stuff that's caused people a little bit of grief. I put a bunch of examples, very detailed examples of what clause control test means. The basic example that was already there was a simple kind of programming example. So I have this claim. This is what my code is going to do. This is the test that demonstrates that my code doesn't do this yet, and here's the control where I add the change in there. And that's the sequence, is that by testing the test before you build the code, you know the test will fail if someone takes the code out or breaks it. That's why this is you think of this as a flavor of test-driven development. So what we're going to do on Thursday is talk about how do we actually turn that into something actionable. So here we go. Let's see. When we say promises like the user sees all the terms, there's no confirm shaming, and equal access to both choices, what do we actually mean? These are examples. They're not intended to be an exhaustive list. In fact, a lot of the times where this becomes important are when you start doing any kind of PII handling. When you are handling personally identifiable information, you will often want to have additional safeguards in place, because otherwise, what's going to happen with that information? Yeah, it's going to get leaked, right? You're going to be right along with him. You're going to be buying one of those subscriptions that scrubs all of the websites of having your personally identifiable information in it, because anybody know what happens to all that data? I'll give you something to look up then when you're feeling like you don't actually want to work on the class but still want to do something that's vaguely related. Go look up data brokers. That's the dark underbelly of personally identifiable information, where the data brokers actually take all of the data from different sources and they find ways of aggregating it. And it's pretty scary what data brokers can tell about you. And that's because you collect a little PII, some of it gets leaked, there's no damage, there's no significant damage from that small leak, but that data then gets aggregated with other people's data or other leaks and other sources of that information. And pretty soon, you get yourself a stalker, and your stalker is sitting there checking up on you by pulling that data from data brokers. Have you ever done a people search? Yeah, those are data brokers. All right. Between now and Thursday, put some more stuff in the GitHub. Tell me what you've been doing. Tell me what you've learned, so that I don't think that so that I won't feel like you don't love me. There we go. How is that for a good manipulation to end the class on dark patterns? You know, probably not very persuasive.